The protagonist doesn't want to die. He wants to be free. If that's what he wants, someone has decided they can help. The guy wakes up. He found himself in a place he didn't know. This place, sight, hearing, smell. How much information he gets from all his 5 senses. It was as if he had been pulled out of hell or abruptly awakened. The stranger saw that he was finally awake. He realized the guy had a gift and called him dead. His name is Holos Carmen. The man considered him a mysterious challenger. Holos is a magician and part-time master. He ordered the dead man to bow. The lad rose and knelt before his master. The smell of mold, the bed of gray stone, a moving body. Guy could see everything perfectly, even though there were no windows or lamps. It seemed unusual to him. Then he realized for the first time, his whole world was the scenery he saw through the window. People felt sorry for the boy. They whispered about what was said to be a disease whose cause was unknown. His body is in constant pain and apparently he can no longer move. For several years now he has been unable to get out of bed on his own. The boy has heard them talking. He's come to terms with it. Practically his whole life has been spent in a hospital bed, a strange disease in which pain constantly coursed through his entire body, weakening him more and more. The cause is unknown. There is not even a cure. The maid told him that a famous white magician was coming to visit him today. She is sure the master will be cured. The boy saw her resigned eyes. No matter how famous the doctor is or what magic he uses, there is no way to be cured. This is an incurable disease, or he made it up. But the guy now doesn't feel the familiar, the pains in his heart, or even headaches that felt like his brain was being whipped with a rapier, or pains that felt like his insides were rotting and melting. He thought this agony would never end. His mind, which had been in turmoil for a long time from the pain, it was sharper than the most sharpened knife. It may sound strange, but at that moment he, for the first time, was fine. At the same time, the guy understood human feelings for the first time. Holos called the dead man his slave, one who had returned from the other side of the world. The master decided to give the nameless man a name. The boy assumed he had returned from hell. Holos said his name would be End, just right for someone who made it to the end. His necromancy granted him temporary life. Temporary life, necromancy, was something the boy had always feared. Even if he didn't attend school, he always knew about those who control the undead, the hideous black mages, necromancers. He realizes the words coming straight to his head. This feeling, one that anyone can easily understand. He died, and now because of the spell of the man standing before him, he has been reborn, and wondered how many years had passed since he had been able to stroll so quietly. Everything seems so unreal. The guy knows he's dead, but he still doesn't know anything at all. He wanted to know where he was and why he was resurrected. Holos realized that it seemed his words had finally reached end. If he couldn't control the guy, he wouldn't waste his precious time on him. The protagonist pondered over those words. He didn't know what he should do now. Holos had saved him from torment for a reason. The guy realized that he couldn't ask this gentleman questions and try to escape. He must first understand the situation. Many corpses appeared from the open door. The master ordered to stay in this room and wait for his orders. After making sure that Holos was gone, he tried out the capabilities of his body. He felt as if his dreams had come true. He decided to explore the room in which he found himself, and was in a morgue. It looked more like a warehouse. He was surprised at first, but a lot of time had passed and it didn't bother him now. He needs more information. Is there anyone here to help him understand the situation? Could any of these corpses be his acquaintance? In terms of amenities, his room was excellent, wasn't it? The guy decided to check the lockers, which definitely had something in them. In one of them, he discovered fangs, and realized that he didn't care about them right now. He decided to check the others, but there was nothing of value in them. Finally, he came across a mirror, and assumed it was a jewel. He hadn't spoken in a long time and was surprised that he didn't even feel pain. In the mirror he saw himself. The only difference between when he was alive is that this body can move freely, and wants to know about this room, about necromancy, and about what exactly he has become. The boy thought to himself, the door is unlocked. As long as he had a body that could move, he could do anything. He had a hard time opening the door. It wouldn't budge, and remembered that Holos had ordered him to stay in this room and wait for his orders. He suddenly realized everything. It's not because the door is heavy. It's not because it won't budge. His body is obeying this master's commands. The boy wondered if he was free, if he could do anything better than he did then. He called it nonsense. At least when he was alive, no one had ever dared to take control of his body away from him. Now he must obey his orders. This gentleman is his savior in a way, even if he is an evil mage and can't refuse to help him. However, the guy won't forgive him. He doesn't know what motives Mr. Holos had in resurrecting him, but End can't forgive him for having the right to decide his fate. Because of that, he had such a violent outburst, which was unusual for him. But despite how determined he was, and didn't want to die, fortunately, he got a second chance, which meant there was no way he could let it slip away. And it didn't matter at all which way he took. He's definitely going to survive. The boy pressed his hand to his chest and realized he was out of breath. He finally realized that he had become an undead. There was also no heartbeat. He could see clearly in this dark room, but somehow he doesn't care. After all, he could still think. After all, he needs to gather more information. Even if he has become a creature of darkness, the guy needs information that would allow him to break free from this lord's control. He is alive. The door finally opened and the master entered the room. Holos handed the lad a sword. It seemed heavy to him. The master decided to give him a little test. He ordered him to follow him, and was glad to be outside. But he got a bad feeling. He noticed movement behind his back. The boy turned around and found wolves, which also belonged to the undead. The protagonist knew that he could not escape without any plan. He would not be able to win by playing cat and mouse with them. Just what would he do in a place like this? The master wanted End to show him his strength. Two wolves were fighting among themselves. This is the fifth incident. Holos said they didn't have enough night wolves. He decided to leave the beast behind and called for End. The boy realized that this was not his goal. Even though he told him to show his strength, they had already been just rambling through the forest for several minutes. Yes, and the Lord's wolves are fighting off the mob of beasts pouncing on them. He had seen the animals' wounds and concluded from this that they felt no pain. There is not an ounce of devotion in these wolves. They simply obey their master's commands. Among the many creatures that live in this world, they are among the most vicious. And witnessed his master's true power, and finally understood why everyone despised him. After all, it is sacrilege to the dead. If the lad doesn't defeat him, he will suffer the same fate as those wretched wolves. Nevertheless, this forest is more dangerous than he realized. If they are just beasts, then when he tries to escape, he will easily be killed. The protagonist wanted to know what the master had brought him here for. If you think of it that way, he had ordered him to show his strength, but he hadn't given any other instructions until now. He was grateful that he could learn more about the surface. That's the limit of his stamina and doesn't feel at all. And as a bonus, he doesn't need to breathe at all. In this body, he can feel fatigue and pain. But moreover, all his senses have become sharper than before when he was human. If the guy could concentrate, it wouldn't be difficult for him to sense the presence of the beasts. It would be too easy if they were the Lord's wolves. And spotted a bear, though it seemed to be a cub. Holos ordered the lad to attack it. The hero was shocked to hear this. He tried not to think about it. And is weak, let alone fighting a beast alone. He had never done something like this before. He's never even trained and doesn't know how to attack. There's no way a worthless man like him could defeat a bear with that kind of physique. The lad is sure that it is impossible. The gentleman did not like his indecision. He communicated that this was an order. The lad must attack him with all his might, kill him, and rushed from his seat with a bullet. The protagonist was heading straight for his opponent. He jumped up before he struck. This caused him to hit him with his sword. The bear struck back. The fellow in a frenzy bit off his opponent's ear. He proceeded to tear the creature apart. At that moment, End was definitely a monster. He then swung his sword to cut the neck of the bear. The guy's gaze was full of determination. He continued to finish off his victim, and realized he had to stop. That was enough, the bear was dead. As he finished the fight, he noticed he was bleeding. It ended with End winning. Holos realized that this was all he could do. That's expected from a body that died of disease. If the guy can't handle it now, he just needs to learn how to control it. Endo thought it was a bit cruel to say that when you make someone, the master summoned something from hell, someone who was frozen in time, to bestow his negative energy on this corpse. Reverse reinforcement was used. The boy understood everything. He had heard that healing magic was hard to use. He had expected this, but Mr. Holos is indeed an unusual person. The master suggested that End find another. In the end, that day, the lad fought 5 fearsome beasts. After the battles, his sweat mixed with blood. He wished he could take a proper shower. It seemed that he was going to be kept in the basement like this. In any case, End was clearly aware of his situation. The guy feels no fatigue or pain, and he can see well in the dark. He seems to be able to withstand the intense cold just as easily. And since he doesn't feel any pain, he must be careful, for he won't notice any injuries on his body. Also, he has learned that the Lord is a powerful mage and that he possesses strong subordinates. Of course, he must take into account the martial abilities of the Lord himself. Now, the guy has to check something. The master doesn't know that he has consciousness. When End first woke up, until now, he thought that the master always talked to himself. Even when he gave him orders, there was no hint that he expected him to respond. The master doesn't even realize that the lad possesses it. This is his chance. If he knew, he would definitely have given him the appropriate order from the beginning. Hence, the guy should not be discovered. Whether he decides to go against the master or not, it's better to have an ace up his sleeve. The protagonist's new life has begun. He had read in a book that the undead were considered a curse. Souls tainted by necromancers become immortal prisoners of pain and can only be released after death caused by the intervention of saints. Then what happened to him when he was alive and suffering even more than he was now? If the guy had known that he would be relieved of this longing by becoming undead, he would have done so without hesitation. The only thing that pisses him off is the lack of freedom. But how can someone who has it understand him who doesn't have that freedom? Holo saw that End had grown stronger. The boy knew it. He was definitely getting stronger. But why? His body is dead, after all. The master realized that he was just a dead man. He had already taken quite a few lives. It would be logical for him to turn into a ghoul. Those words seemed strange to Endo. He decided that it was about time to get started. The master must be sleeping. The boy discreetly took some books from the library. Even since End was alive, he had loved books. He doesn't think it would be an exaggeration to say that books were his only friends. However, many of the books lining the shelves of this library are written in a language he does not understand. The boy assumed they were grimoires of some sort. At any rate, he's glad he can read at least this book, an encyclopedia of the undead. The Dead, Stage 1 Transformation. A species of undead revived by a necromancer's spell. Do not grow over time, but accumulate negative energy, taking the life force from the creatures they kill, thus they become stronger. Then guesses what he meant. It seems the master wanted to make him a stronger dead man. The next stage is Ghoul. Once cast, the undead curse is not cancelled even after the caster dies. The boy heard footsteps and put the books in his locker. A girl came into the room to clean. Her name was Lu. She is another resident in this castle, and she is the master's slave. This collar serves as proof of her slavery, and it will also hurt her if she ignores his orders. However, he cannot take away her freedom. So, it is safe to say that she is not a faithful servant of the master. And yet, Lu is not his ally. She's not dangerous, but it's best not to let your guard down. Lu cleans up carelessly, and in this darkness, frankly, it seems like she can't clean the place. The girl walks past the lockers, and thinks this place would make a good hiding place in the future. While scrubbing the floor, she accidentally touched a corpse. Thus, Lu defiled it. The girl was scared out of her wits. She didn't know what to do because she would be scolded by her master. Lately, End had a strong feeling of hunger. He knew that he was not allowed to do so. The boy realized that this was a stage of transformation, the desecration of a corpse. The ghoul, unlike the dead man, has some strength and, accordingly, intelligence, though its level is no greater than that of a human infant. Also, when reincarnated, a ghoul increases its physical strength, also gaining regeneration. Though it can move in sunlight, it still tries to avoid it. It is active mostly at night. They have some special skills, one of them being a sharp claw. These claws are much sharper than any normal blade. Ghouls use them to cut and devour corpses. The boy's human memories came back to him. Holos and Lu stood before him. The master saw that End still hadn't turned. He ordered Lu to bring him a knife. The man thought it was too slow. The master ran the blade over the boy's hand. Dead men regain their desire. They will regain their minds, and the undead will shed blood like humans. And realized he didn't want to be here. Somehow, this pain is 100 times less than the pain he had before he was resurrected. Holos saw that the guy was still dead. He ordered the girl to tell him if anything happened to this wound. In response, the girl said nothing, which made him angry. The master told Endu to go back to his usual place. The boy left the room. He realized that Holos was trying to see if he had regeneration. Sad. He's so naive. End ran his sharp claws along his arm. The guy thought it was funny that he hurt himself. Nevertheless, it was necessary. If he was going to carry out his plan, he had to be willing to do something. Suddenly, he found himself seeing all of this with Lu. The girl rushed to run. The guy tried to stop her, but suddenly changed his mind. What would he do if he caught up with her? He didn't think he could change her mind. The worst thing would be if the master saw him while he was chasing her. That's right, the master didn't order him to do anything like that. Therefore, he should not pursue her. The master who pushed Lu away entered the room. He thought that the girl was plotting something against him. The man recalled that he had ordered her to call him if anything happened to his wound. Holos did not recall that he had authorized her to lie. He ordered Endu to raise his arm and show them his wound. He now asked Lu what she had told him about his wound. The girl replied that he was on his own. The man grinned. He asked if it was true, as the idiot girl claimed that he had wounded himself. The boy remained silent. The landlord believed him. Lu claimed he was lying. Holos hadn't told her yet, but the undead obeyed every word of its creator. He brutally beat the girl for it, and remarked that he was right. He is the loyal undead of the master. That's why the guy didn't pursue Lu and raised his hand when he was told, and didn't answer because he didn't order him to answer then. He didn't lower his hand because he wasn't given the proper order. The master has full confidence in his abilities as a necromancer. Obviously, he would believe him rather than the words of some servant of no value. The Lord let the girl know that she would not be treated better if she reported the anomaly. Did she really think that her useless brain, incapable of learning anything, would be able to deceive him? If she deceived him next time, he would tear her alive into little pieces. He will make her soul squirm in eternal pain. The master allowed N to lower his hand. Holos ordered Lu to clean this room. The corpses here are far more valuable than her pathetic life. After all, in buying her, he spent even less than 1 gold. The guy thought, since Lu might not get the next chance, it seems that she is in a slightly different position. However, it can be said that she is N's colleague, and if his coworker fell, he should help him up. The guy thanked the girl, for now he didn't have to worry about his wound. It's useless. The master will never believe what she says. He grabbed Lu's hand and lifted her up, smiling. The girl immediately rushed toward the door, although the boy said so. But Lu's words were like little thorns that pierced the Lord's heart. His suspicions will gradually grow. In other words, it is only a matter of time before he is exposed. It is also his fault, and is confident that Lu will not back down after hearing this. Hence, he will just take advantage of his advantage. It will be a good opportunity to get revenge before everything is revealed, and then, as long as there is one more variable able to affect the circumstances. Holos was surprised to hear the news. The smuggler Huck heard that the Death Knight Order would soon arrive in the city of Undead, and knew that it was the strongest army in the world, ruining the endless darkness. They are the ones who often appear in fairy tales as heroes who deal with all threats and difficulties with their swords of light. They were the main character's idols when he was still a child. The master brought him to such a place for the first time. He got very important information. The smuggler was sure that he could not be wrong. All the partners in his business are silent men. However, their sense of smell is indeed a problem. If Holos wants to be safe, he should probably stay away from this place for a while. The host was surprised that they were following him here as well. His research would be complete if he had a couple more years. He was going to kill them and make them his eternal slaves. In the books End had read in the past, battles between necromancers and the Death Knight Order were often illustrated. Their feuding relationship, it seems, is not just fiction. Then it turns out, a corpse like him, who is naturally not alive, would be their enemy too, and Lord and Knight Order of Death. Obviously, the weakest of these three will be the guy. He thought he could influence the circumstances, but to think that it would have something to do with the Death Knight Order, and wants to escape as quickly as possible, but is prevented from doing so by the master who has supreme authority over him. The supremacy of the Lord is actually more than just the right to absolute command. Based on what the guy has managed to unearth, the Lord also has the privilege of knowing the approximate location of any critter, and the right to cast special magic on them from afar. That means he won't have freedom as long as the Lord lives, and had never wished for anything like that. Hack saw that Mr. Holos just couldn't stand being dragged into a war. The smuggler is going to take a vacation for a while. Before Huck escapes, Holos would like to ask him something. The boy was interested in what it was that he wanted to ask of him. Paying attention to the notes, he couldn't read it. After reading the note, Huck understood everything. The smuggler said that nevertheless, he really survived, didn't he? Since it wasn't exactly a healthy corpse, he thought it would die quickly, and yet, Holos concluded that the corpses of the nobles seemed to be of a different caliber indeed. The boy knew that this was incorrect. The simple reason why he had managed to survive was because he had nothing but the will to live. He had been thinking a lot lately. Maybe this pure, innocent emotion was due to the fact that he had given the corpse his former memories, even though it was almost impossible. Holos asked him to get him more noble bodies. Hack explained that even if they were corpses, eccentrics trying to sell the bodies of relatives were not easy to find. Mr. Holos reminded him that the one Huck had laid his hands on was the original corpse of Enda. The smuggler replied that they have a promise never to tell the origin of the corpse. Holos knows. Guy had been bedridden sick for a long time. He decided to move closer to the case. The smuggler left the room. The master thought in spite of that, he is not yet finished, so there is no choice. He guesses he'll have to check the condition of the other corpse. The man informed the guy that they were going back to the morgue as usual, and realized that his corpse had been sold. However, he probably would not feel any shock or even bitterness. His family hadn't visited him for the past few years, but they had paid a lot of money for his treatment. even if they didn't really think of him as anything more. It was all undoubtedly for his sake. There was no need to blame them for selling his corpse to Haku. After all, in the end, he was given another chance to live because of it. Thus, no matter what it cost him, he should survive. The boy pondered whether to join the Lord in repelling the attack of the Knight's Order of Conch or to kill him and escape. Right now there is only one way: kill him. Lu happily informed the master that she had found proof of the truth of her words. They are here. The girl showed Enda's books in the locker and asked the master's opinion. There were never any books in there, were there? This creature brought these books here from the library. The master inquired where was the proof that she herself had not brought these books here. What an incorrigible girl. It seemed to him that he had already told her that if she lied next time, he wouldn't let her get away so easily. The girl said with a tremor in her voice that she was sorry with all her soul. Holos kept thinking that the spell he used to bind the slave might have been defective, so he came up with something new to force the slave into absolute obedience. Just like the undead, Lu kept saying that she was really sorry. He ordered her to stop. She would be reborn, just already without her memories. The master began to cast a spell. The boy thanked the girl for it. He drove his sharp claws through the necromancer's head. And here we are. The time has come. In order to defeat the master, he needed to put him in a situation where he couldn't give him commands. So the boy told Lu thank you, and was sure he had killed him and now he was free. Now he should leave the forest as soon as possible and run away somewhere. He will survive by hunting animals in some similar forest. The boy looked at his hand and saw that his master's blood on it had disappeared, which he obviously didn't expect. Mr. Holos stood in front of him, and was sure he had killed him. He concluded that the guy really had already gained his mind, and plunged his claws into his heart. The necromancer laughed. He didn't die not because the guy pierced his head. However, it is clever, and is very clever. The Lord doesn't know when he gained intelligence, but he not only hid his abilities but also waited patiently for the opportunity to kill him. Holos expected a lot, but End turned out to be much smarter than he expected. The protagonist realized what the necromancer was. He is indeed a monster. The master's blood from his hand disappeared again. The guy didn't understand how he could kill a man who had survived such serious injuries and why he was still alive. He wouldn't be able to escape anymore, nor could he defend himself. In that case, all he has to do is continue to beat him until he dies. The necromancer orders him to stop. He said End may be smart, but he knows nothing about magic. The reason the guy was defeated was because he thought Holos had only one life, and didn't understand what he meant. He explained that he had divided his life into 120 parts. The lad had only destroyed 2 of those. To kill the master, his dear subordinate would need to destroy all 120 parts in the blink of an eye. This is what he is talking about. This is standard practice among first-class necromancers. The protagonist thought it was unfair. Does it really mean that his rebellion was doomed from the start? As the man realized, it meant that the guy wouldn't stop attacking him. Mr. Holos decided that from now on, he forbids him from any aggressive or unfavorable action to him. Enda was disappointed with the way things turned out. That's the last thing he wanted to hear, though it basically means he wasn't going to kill him right now. Then, one day, the guy would definitely kill him. The necromancer was surprised by his unwavering will despite the absolute difference in strength. Possessing intelligence enough to hide his abilities, acquire intelligence, and even avoid detection. And the immortal lord he deserved. He would become his power, even despite his intentions. The kid asked to be released, he would obey him. Lord Holos laughed and allowed him to move, and asked to give the order again. The protagonist thought, let him laugh all he wants. Even if he is captured here, he who laughs last laughs, and until then he will wait. Besides, he still has a trump card. Guy suggested that Lu take a look around town. The girl reminded him that they had been given orders by their master to do their business and then return quickly, and noticed that he hadn't ordered them to stay focused. If they both stuck to the same legend, everything would be fine. She replied that it was his duty to protect her, and hesitated. Several days had passed since that moment. The days of his confinement were undoubtedly already waiting for him. However, as the lad ate the slaughtered animal, Mr. Holos announced that he would protect Lu and go with her to the nearest city of NJ. It is dangerous in the town, but Master can't go there by himself. He has prepared equipment for them to hide their aura of death from people. As long as they are careful, they won't have any problems. He handed him a cloak of endless night, which lessens the effects of daylight, and an amulet of shadow, which disguises the presence of evil from the Death Knight Order. Unlike the ghoul, the dark stalker that the guy will turn into, and the vampire that is the final stage, he is able to resist sunlight, but have him keep it to himself just in case. The protagonist knew that the vampire, it must be one of the most famous forms of undead. He was grateful, but why would he risk so much for a simple trek into town? Earlier, Holos had asked Huck to provide him with something, and the boy is going to bring it to him. It's his trump card against them. He asked him not to worry. Holos has sent scouts into the forest. His countermeasures are perfect, so En won't die so easily. The guy thought that they would definitely kill them. It wasn't a lie what he told the master. He wouldn't let anyone finish him off, even if it was done by those he once dreamed of becoming. If they try to kill him, then they are his enemies. Nevertheless, right now, he definitely has no way to defeat them, and he has no choice but to hide as long as possible to avoid being caught. He has lived in such a dark place for so long. Isn't it okay to have a little fun in the city? And no one was watching them now, so they certainly wouldn't be discovered. Lou didn't like that. She advised it was best not to tempt her. He's a monster. She will tell the master about what he suggested. And replied that it was pointless. He is sure that the girl understands. Even if she makes such a statement, the Lord's attitude toward her won't change. The Lord already knows what he will say and how he will act. If she listens to his proposal, then when their Lord passes away suddenly and En gets her freedom, he will bring her safely to the city. He inquired about her opinion. Lou believed that their master would never die. He is a terrible man. The girl had seen countless people for whom it had turned out badly. The ones who will die will be them. And saw that her heart had already been shattered. She has always been adrift. That's pretty scary. For her, death is no longer salvation. Huck handed them what Holos had asked of him. The guy was upset that, in the end, he didn't get to explore the city. If he could continue to survive like this, he would have a chance. He suddenly dropped what had been handed to him and grabbed his head. The girl asked what was wrong and told him to hurry up and pick it up. For a moment his senses sharpened. He noticed a strange light and informed Lou that the Death Knight Order was here. The guy told her to keep walking with an innocent look. It was, figuratively speaking, light, moon, sun, sort of the epitome of a miracle. This is very different from what he had heard. The guy certainly doesn't know anything about them. However, he does know that the Death Knight Order has 3 ranks. Most likely, it is the 3rd rank specifically that are the knights. The glow of the girl beside them is even brighter. Maybe she is a knight of the 2nd rank. And the main problem is this old man. He is definitely of the 1st rank. The guy can't get any closer to them. There's a chance they'll discover him quickly. Yeah, this world is pretty damn unfair. And, clasping his eyes, tried to convince himself that for now he couldn't beat them. He needs to get as far away from here as possible right now. At this moment, he needs to get out of here. He was noticed by an unfamiliar girl. She noticed that he didn't look well and inquired about his condition. He was trembling all over and his face. It seemed to the knight that Senri was very curious. He apologized. She may seem angry, but that is only the true appearance of a princess. Even so, she has a promising future ahead of her. Guy is sure they are impeccably prepared. Unless that older man is around, he won't be discovered. In that case, En will seduce them and pass them by. He smiled. The boy thanked for his concern. He's already recovering, so he's fine. He had been bedridden for the last few days and now he had a chance to go outside. The princess understands him so well. After all, she too has been in bed for a long time. The girl remembered that with healing magic she could heal him a little, and declined the offer. He thanked the princess. The boys were about to leave when suddenly the knight grabbed the boy's shoulder. He apologized for the delay. At the moment, under orders from above, they are looking for necromancers hiding nearby. Unfortunately, they didn't have much success. He decided to be blunt, and looks quite similar to the undead. He doesn't sense any darkness in him, but vampires are afraid of light. He suggested that the boy take off his hood, which the princess did not like, and complied with his request. He had to sleep a lot, so his skin must have become very pale. The knight concluded that he was mistaken. The princess felt uncomfortable. The guy realized that it was their job, there was no choice. He believes they will meet again. The two walked into an alley, and has a proposition for Lou. He offers a deal. There's something he just needs. Nothing wrong with that. He wouldn't go against her orders. The girl declared that no matter how much you ask her, she would refuse. It would be proper for her to report to her master as soon as possible, and admitted that he understands her. He is as weak as she is, so he knows what she wants most. The boy asked her to get what he asked for and he would help in return. He moved closer to her and whispered the request in her ear. Lou marveled at how ridiculous she was. He reminded her that he would be sure to fulfill his promise and waited for her answer. The girl was frightened out of her wits at the thought of her master. She called him a monster and realized that he was taking a great risk, but the gamble was worth it. And the winner would be neither his master nor the Death Knight Order. It would be him. Holos was surprised that they had encountered a Death Knight. He was disturbed by the presence of a first-class knight here, and asked if he knew him. It turned out that they had been fierce opponents for a long time. He could swear that he had hidden himself perfectly, but apparently he had miscalculated somewhere. In such a remote place, just when the fulfillment of his cherished wish is surely so close, he gets in his way. And so, wherever he goes, the lad wondered if they had any chance of winning. The master was sure of it. However, they could gain much more power if he had a little more time. Could this be his final test? And pondered over those words. Master felt that they could still make it. No matter how unfortunate it was, he couldn't put off fighting this man any longer. Kolos deployed a huge fang. There was no hatred left in it at all. He would need a new one. He asked Hack to prepare another one, and had said earlier that he felt a tremendous power emanating from the Death Knights. The boy talked about how he was shocked. He felt as if he would turn into dust at his touch. That's what he felt then. Mr. Holos laughed. The man replied that that was correct. This is the caliber of an undead lord. The power N felt is proof of the boundless power he controls. Undead, it's a shadow cast by light, so a mere ghoul could feel it. He'll make N the master of the undead, and then the guy will put all the silly gods that get in Holo's way in their place, and didn't understand why he was still trying to re-educate him. He makes him hunt without allowing him to show intelligence. And what kind of undead lord is he anyway? Doesn't sound like something good. However, he's interested in it, but he has to refuse, and so he will need a lot of training. They have no time to waste, as the Lord said. He shouldn't waste it either. His plan is bound to work, and anyone who tries to thwart it will simply perish. A first-class knight suggested that the others still hadn't found Holo's Carmen. Third-class knights Nabila and Lefri replied that this was expected from second-class knights. He's definitely hiding somewhere in the forest, but the containment maze is also well created. There isn't a single crevice in it, and a frontal attack will take plenty of time. Lefri won't last that long. Adrian replied that his techniques outside of necromancy must be top-notch as well. He's probably stronger than any second-class spellcaster they've encountered. Nabila must keep his composure. The second-class knight, Senri, conjured a high-grade illusionary barrier magic that takes a natural form and bewitches anyone who enters a certain radius, causing them to lose their way. A head-on attack would be quite difficult. Is there a power that can weaken the barrier? Here was someone who could help them. The man realized that he was dangerous. To this day, Holos had slipped from his grasp time and time again. They must destroy him before he reached first class. As planned, he leaves it to Senri. Together with Lefri and the others, they must destroy Holos. He wondered if she would be able to do it. The girl confirmed that she would. The first-class knight reassured her. She's still young, but already her strength is extremely close to a first class. In particular, her blessing is considered the strongest among all the knights in existence. Here of Soul, swordswoman of light, blessed by the gods since birth, Senri Silvis. The ability to dispel darkness, which they had enhanced through rigorous study and training, a blessing. From birth, she was better than any of her peers. She was definitely born to be a Death Knight. If she gained experience, she would certainly easily surpass even a first-rate knight like him. He is going to make Senri a first-class knight after her victory over Holos. The girl thought she didn't have enough strength yet, but he replied that it didn't matter. She has a natural talent for swordsmanship. She will soon surpass it. The power of her blessing is undeniable. The only thing that bothers him is her naivete. Nothing else. After all, necromancers are cunning. Senri promised that there would be no problem with that. Since she was a child, she has witnessed many tragedies. They are the enemies of humanity. The blessing that was bestowed upon her exists to punish them and also to grant all defiled souls rest. Lefri was sure that the master could count on them. He didn't deny that Senri was naive, but after all, they would be with her. After all, they have more experience. They will make up for what she lacks. Even considering he's a necromancer, he won't be able to survive alone. The master is sure that Holos has many connections in this city. He asked Senri to look into it and continue the search. He won't take any action for now, but if she notices anything really strange, have her inform him. The girl promised to do so. Nabila informed Senri that it had been 5 days. They might just tear down the barrier along with the entire forest. Her blessing should be able to do that. The girl had told him many times, but she believes she needs to repeat herself. If they destroyed the forest, the magical beasts living there might start attacking the city. Nabila stated that was why the master called her naive. Yes, it will cause some damage, but it's better than dealing with a second-rate necromancer after all. Senri realized that he was right. The duty of the knightly order is to exterminate the darkness, and everything else should come second. Even if it might result in civilian casualties, they must dare to fight. However, she became a Death Knight to help the weak. That frail, bedridden girl whose body was destroyed by that tremendous power no longer existed. Now, Senri has the power to fight. She is a leader, and since she is, the search will continue. Nabila realized that if they searched for them some more, they might find someone who knew their location. But, in that time, they would strengthen their forces. She might not get hurt, but their comrades would die. The girl replied that if they didn't find anyone in those 3 days, she would destroy the forest. They would prepare during the search to clean up after the destruction and mark the area for destruction. The boy left her. The servant asked if Senri had already returned to her room. A letter had been sent to her. Holos ordered N to keep killing. He needs to turn into a dark stalker at the very least. He's sure the kid will make it in time. And once he's ready, Holos will perform the ritual, and will become a supreme being, the greatest lord of the undead. The boy asked what he meant by greatest. He answered nothing. It was obvious. However, the guy couldn't help but ask, what does the concept of the greatest being entail? If he became one, would he be stronger than the Death Knights and be able to live a quiet life away from everyone? The protagonist's goal is far from strength. He has done his best. This is an adventure, a necromancer and a Death Knight, a lord and a girl named Senri, who will emerge victorious. The Lord says they'll make it all happen, and that there's still a little time left. But that's a mistake. The Lord didn't understand why the containment maze wasn't working. They are very fast, and knew there was no more time. Holos was sure that it was the merchant Huck's fault. The protagonist had prepared as well as the enemy actually. The only one not yet prepared. It's the Lord. He turned to End. The man summoned him with him. The Death Knights are already here. The knights realized it wasn't a trap. Then it looked very much like an ambush. Senri saw that the barrier wasn't working. We need to find the others. Containment maze magic doesn't work on those being led through the barrier. So the necromancer's hostages have people who might be on their side. The girl asked her comrades to be careful. Their enemy would be accompanied by countless undead. Nabila was surprised that she cared about them so much. They would help her so that she could just swing her sword as usual. The protagonist and the necromancer realized that they were getting closer. Holos thought that fortunately, they wouldn't be able to bother them. Soon he would show them his secret. Considering who the Lord was fighting, and wondered if he had any chance of winning. The Lord must die. After all, as long as he's alive, all of the lad's attempts to escape will fail. Lord Holos has summoned the undead. The multitude of animals serving him merged in a death march, a parade of corpses. The protagonist saw that they were strong, so they will help buy some time. That's probably what the Lord thinks, too. The guy asked if he was going to give him power. The Lord knew that excessive power could damage N's body, and there was no way he would let the undead Lord's vessel collapse. Guy hopes it's true. They were destroying Holos, but now he has the material thanks to Haku. After the knights are killed, he will turn them into first-class undead, and assumed that by material, he meant the giant fang. He never found out whose it was, however for now. He shouldn't get involved in this. The boy wished the Lord would give him the equipment before the battle. A shadow amulet, a cloak of endless night, and an axe. Master informed him that they are on the shelf in the lab. When he's finished, have him come to him. That's an order. He will be in the hall. And thanked him. He and Lou looked at each other. The boy considered it unnecessary. Based on his experience, an axe is clearly an unusual weapon. It most likely has a spell on it. From now on, he would need to be wary. If for some reason the Death Knight order detects any negative energy in him, it's a goner. For starters, he's not going to fight. He still has a trump card up his sleeve, and he knows exactly when to use it. His trump card is the name he had when he was alive. Names are very important to magicians. They use them to contact people and make contracts with spirits. So when the Lord resurrected the boy, he called him End, assuming he had forgotten everything. However, it wasn't just his name that he had memorized. He also had vivid memories of his past life. He is not an End. Therefore, when the master orders him to do something, calling him End, his order has no effect. He has been purposely hiding all this so that when the time is right he can betray the master. And now, the time has come. The one who wrote the letter to Senri telling him of the Lord's whereabouts was him. The boy has faith in Senri, but if she loses, he will be captured by the Lord again, and there will be no second chance. But even so, all he can do now is hope for the best. The knights were attacked by the beasts of a necromancer that no one could find. They didn't understand how he managed to control so many undead at such a great distance. Lefri offered the girl to retreat. They would soon disappear anyway, to which she firmly refused. He knew she would say that. This is what he calls a candidate for knight of the first rank. Fortunately, Senri still had enough blessing left. However, she should make the guys save their strength. While she was thinking, she was suddenly attacked by a wolf. The girl decided that she would have to get rid of them all at once. Lefri realized what she was about to do, but Senri replied that the master would have done the same. The girl realized the release of the soul. The magic of the light of freedom worked on all beings. Neville was surprised by the amount of undead she destroyed in a single moment. As expected of a knight of the second rank, the girl decided that they shouldn't delay. It's alright, she can fight and she hasn't even used up half of her strength. Holos seemed to already know about their attack. They'll finish him off before he reorganizes. The doors were swung open. It seemed they were expected here. It had been a long and difficult journey. However, Holos felt it was closer than ever. It had been 50 years since he had become a second-class necromancer. A necromancer's greatest wish is an undead lord. With this creature, he will become one of the most powerful beings in the world. He will finally become a first-class necromancer. Perhaps the decision to take a miracle-like end was indeed a good one. With such resourcefulness, with such intelligence, even if he was a ghoul, he would definitely pass the ritual. Holos believes this is the final test. He has an errand for Lu, too. Even the weak are useful. The source of their strength is life itself, prayer, and pride. If he destroys them, their strength will diminish. Together with the Skeleton Knight, he ordered her to attack the Death Knight Order. Nabila had told Senri for the umpteenth time that he shouldn't use his power so often. The girl decided that since it was over with the scary buggy knight, it was all right now. Nabila realized that, just as the master had said, it was all the shenanigans of that pesky necromancer. What's next? Vampires. Senri doesn't think he has any. It's highly unlikely that a cautious second-class necromancer would send a dangerous vampire. However, it's not out of the question. Guy replied that he was joking and she was taking it seriously. The guys realized that still, if there was a chance that they would be attacked by vampires, they should be on the alert. Vampires are a separate kind of undead. They have many weaknesses, but they possess incredibly strong transformation. In addition to this, they have super regeneration. That is, the ability to fully return to normal even after losing all their strength. They also possess non-human intelligence. However, what makes them different from all other undead is resistance to magic. That is why wise necromancers do not turn their undead into vampires. Vampires, in general, are monsters that can single-handedly kill knights of the third rank. If they appear in a battle with a necromancer, then it is best for them to temporarily retreat to create a new plan. However, there wasn't always time for that. If he could control the vampires, then he would prepare a stronger counterattack. Neville didn't care. In any case, he offered to fight. Judging from the number of footsteps, another one was heading towards the guys. Lu came out to join them. Senri remembered that it was the girl she had seen before. She wanted to hug her. Lu didn't realize what she was doing. Come to think of it, she had always lived like this. The village where she was born no longer exists. She doesn't know what her parents looked like. For her entire conscious life, Lu has been a slave with no family, and eventually she began to serve the most dangerous creature, a necromancer. She has sinned, her soul corrupted. She can't move on, she can't escape, and she will most likely die honorably. She wonders if he'll keep his promise. Lu pulled out a knife. At that moment, a bow was fired at her. Lu marveled at the beautiful light she saw. She thanked Senri for being sad for her. She is a beautiful person. Lu sees for the first time. Such a kind person. Thelma understands Senri's feelings, but she can't say she's impressed by her act. How did she allow the necromancer's servant to approach her? Laffrey agreed with her. Regardless of who is in front of her, they have no idea what's in their head. After all, she knows the story of the Death Knight who was killed after the servant he saved turned into a monster. It is not their job to save people. It's their job to destroy, to prevent tragedies. He asked if she could fight. The girl decided that after they killed Holos, they should bury her. She ordered them to go forward. Holos greeted the Death Knights who had finally arrived. So the humans broke his camp and made their way here. They are truly fearsome creatures. Senri replied that she was a member of the Death Knights, and she would kill him. He suggested that Lu was proving to be quite useful. His spell had already been completed. This place is now in another world. For them, the people who dared to stand in his way, he has a special punishment. The necromancer cast his spell. It involved only 2 huge fangs. The knights couldn't believe it, with only 2 fangs. Mr. Holos presents it to them. A little secret. A spell resulted in a dragon, and now he must kill them. Defender of death, guardian of Hades. The princess was surprised to feel his terrifying death energy. Using a spell, she resolutely went on the attack. The girl decapitated the creature. The necromancer could not believe it. He was struck by the strength of that person. She had no vengeance. There was not an ounce of anger in her eyes. Senri realized that he had to die. It was granted to the Death Knight, Senri Silvis, the prophecy. Holos thought she was a first-class knight, but the princess replied that she would become one. The battle was watched from afar by End. He knew that this was undoubtedly the battle that would become famous in legends. On the battlefield fighting a lone young girl, Senri, the boy bet on her. He did everything he could to increase her chances of success. More like cowardice, but it was all he could do. He's the weakest of them all, and did everything to survive. He would have a better chance of escaping the Death Knights than the Lord. The manor where he had spent just under a year after becoming undead would collapse. By flame, by sword, by dragon attack, it will be destroyed. The necromancer was angry that even now this bloody old geezer was interfering with his plans. The boy realized that he was determined to stand to the end. He wondered if Senri and the others would be able to stand. Holo's Carmen. This is the enemy of the master princess whom he had fought for many years. The guys asked Senri to get out. Something was bothering her, namely why they were the ones entrusted with this extermination. Most likely, though he had the strength for it, as an established, decided to pass on his mission to the next generation. The dragon attacked the girl, which frightened his comrades. The necromancer was certain that the Death Knights were finished. Senri had no intention of evading the attack. Thanks to her sword, the princess repelled the enemy's strike, which also affected all the undead. The enemy was defeated. Holos could not understand how she could possess such power. The girl knew that these wounds were fatal. The necromancer regretted that his wish had never come true, and now was not the night, and realized that Senri had won, which meant he had won. The boy was the only one who had survived. Reliable comrades are very important. If the Lord had them, then the battle might have ended very differently. He fought with all his might and his faith was unwavering, but he still lost. It was not for Enda to judge him. He was his enemy, but also his savior. The boy decided that he should hurry up and prepare for his escape before the Death Knights returned. However, before he escapes, he needs to fulfill his promise, and smells her scent. He thought she would be buried under the rubble. But the divine protection is incredible. As End promised, he will prepare her grave, and he will pray for her to be able to rest in peace while he is here. Lu must be glad she made a pact with him. One last time, he pulled out an arrow and broke the collar. The guy apologized, but he really doesn't know how to conduct a funeral. Even though he has only been to one funeral, he doesn't remember it at all. But he knows that she will definitely be happier than the Lord. After all, she will be granted a grave, and thinks the Lord has gotten his. He figures she'll be lonely with only her name written. The guy doesn't know Lu's last name, so his last name will do. Anything is better than Carmen. He wanted the girl to rest in peace, and was suddenly asked what he was doing. Behind him was Senri, and didn't understand why it had happened so quickly. It hadn't even been half a day. Even if they came back to clean up the place, he thought they'd put it off at least overnight. The girl turned to him, and tried to think of something as soon as possible. First of all, she's here alone. That's good news. However, she has even more light energy now than she had before she left this place. She's a real monster. Plus, she saw him together with Lu in the city. Since the knights most likely killed Lu, it's obvious that he would also be considered an enemy. The princess hesitates. In the city, he noticed that she is different from the third-class knights in some ways. She has something they don't have, and that is compassion. The boy turned to her. He said that back when she was still alive, Lu had asked for a grave to be made for her so she could rest. He prayed, and believes he can address her as Senri. He inquired about the reason she came here. The girl had come to claim her body. She was going to bury her in the city. The boy concluded that he should not have gotten out of his way. The princess assumed that she was his friend, and replied that she was not. She was his family. In any case, Lu finally found peace. Remaining a slave of Holos, she had no future, and subconsciously begged for death. Senri and her crew had saved her. The girl replied that it was not true. It's hard to read her, but to the guy, she does seem full of sympathy. He thinks he might take a chance, and said that it's so uncomfortable to be undead in times like these, isn't it? Even if he's sad, he doesn't cry. The princess, realizing this, abruptly distanced herself from him. The guy confirmed the fact that he is a ghoul. However, somehow, his memories of human life survived, and asked if she would mind hearing his story. His surviving affection for the living amid the agony of his own life's end and despair. The marvelous story of his rebirth, the tale of unhappy end. The protagonist's rebirth as a dead man was not what he desired. In any case, he was lucky. He was able to run freely through the forest. That was enough to make him happy. After all, what's the difference between a human and the undead who don't attack or who don't need to attack the living? Senri realized who that letter was from. He explained that Lu was helping him. Holo's Carmen was planning to perform a terrible ritual. If it continued like this, he could be ordered to attack people, and wanted to avoid that at all costs. They were really lucky that Senri and her team had come to the neighboring town. Thanks to their people, the guy would be able to remain human. Fortunately, there are no humans in this forest. He plans to protect Lu's grave here, living in peace for the rest of his life. He can just hunt for food, just like he did before, or it is impossible. The princess replied that she understood. This is the first time she's encountered an undead that has retained its memories, and had retained his mind, so it shouldn't be a problem. Guy could see that she was still hesitant, but he can sense that she's already reconciled. So I guess Senri will probably try to convince her comrades, righteous in every way, and kind to everyone, and felt relieved. He's sure Lu will be glad too. The girl had decided to come again tomorrow. He could tell her if he needed anything. She would bring it. The boy realized he couldn't ask her for something like that, but he decided to ask for something nonetheless. It would be great if she could bring flowers for Lu. There are no suitable flowers in this forest. Senri promised to bring them. The boy thanked her. It was heartbreaking. She would probably never be seen again. He turned to the girl and remembered something. Holo's Carmen had said before that he was going to create an undead lord. It probably didn't matter anymore, but he asked if she knew who an undead lord was. Senri told him that it was the first in the classification of necromancers, a necromancer who transforms into unique undead using forbidden techniques. Holo's Carmen was a human, and she destroyed him. It doesn't matter anymore, and realized that Senri now planned to convince her comrades, but she had no chance. He only survived because Senri is different. The Order of Death Knights, who wish to destroy all that belongs to darkness, will never allow such a thing to happen. There is no doubt about it. They will come as a group to kill him. They will come to kill the terrifying creature that tricked their princess and convince them to keep him alive. But even so, his desire is simply to live. The boy asked Senri for forgiveness, but if he didn't hurry up and run away from here. A dark silhouette appeared before End, and he heard the familiar voice of Holo's informing him that the time had come. The vessel of the undead lord. The boy couldn't believe it and didn't understand how he was still alive. He noticed that he was barely noticeable, but his presence was faintly felt. Holo's never thought that his body would actually be destroyed, but the embedded spirit fragment proved useful. From this, the guy realized that he had been reborn as a ghost. So that was the price of the guy not taking the important matter into his own hands. So he must finish it all by himself, and decided to do so. He was surprised to find that the master was fine. Holo's explained that his last shard was embedded in the lad. It was necessary for the ritual. He was lucky to be alive, and realized the reason he was still alive. The Lord announced that the ritual must now begin. The birth of the Lord of the Undead. His plans may have changed, but they are inevitable. Now his life is but a remnant, and his body is his greatest masterpiece, and his spirit is the final key. Once his wish is granted, the lad will be king, and all the light will be in his hands. He will not tolerate any resistance, and must do nothing. The lad swung his sword sharply. It had no effect on Holo's. The Lord concluded that his strength was so weakened. His orders were ineffective, and Anne pretended they were working. He is indeed cunning. The man kept saying it was all useless. The boy is smart, brave, and cautious, but he lacks knowledge. His attacks won't work on Holo's. The undead are immune to physical harm. The ghost is an intangible entity, an aggressive spirit. The boy swung again, thinking that the Lord probably looks like that too. But End failed again, which annoyed him more and more. Lord Holos realized that he had lost control because of fear. In any case, Holos needs a vessel with an unprecedented talent for death magic. For a long time now, the Lord thought he was truly the strongest Lord of the Undead. The boy remembered Senri's words about him. He thought of a vessel for the Undead Lord. He is a vessel without a soul. Holos desired a strong and talented vessel. The Lord was going to take possession of the soul. The master wouldn't give him any information because he didn't need it. Endu lacked knowledge. Maybe he does. All he can do is think. Thinking and overcoming pain. That's all he could do while he was alive and bedridden. And that's what he can still do. The guy claimed Holo's Carmen is weak. He is blind. In the end, he never noticed the deception. In the end, he never recognized the agreement between End and Lu. In the end, he lost to Senri. He doesn't realize where they are, even though the guy subconsciously pivoted back. Clutching an arrow in his hand, he lunged at the spirit, and knew that ghosts possess a special immunity, but, on the other hand, having no body, they are worse than all undead at carrying light energy, and they are weak to magical attacks. In other words, silver weapons are the strongest tool against incorporeal ghosts. He plunged this arrow into Holos's head. The master wasn't going to scream. That's why the guy lacks knowledge of magic. He's not just a ghost. His shard is hidden inside End. And as long as it is, he is immortal. Normal ghosts aren't completely immune to physical damage. Guy should have realized this when he failed to harm him with his light absorber, Blood Ruler. In any case, he should be sure his vessel would become the strongest undead lord, and wished him dead. The Lord replied that he was already dead. So is the lad. They both are, and never thought Holo's Carmen had a sense of humor. A strange sensation came to the protagonist, causing him to scream with terror. Darkness was agonizingly beginning to overwhelm him. He does not understand the nature of what is happening. He is nauseated. But one thing is certain. If he loses consciousness, he will die. Memories from his life came back to him. The boy felt a change in himself. His flesh and his soul are being transformed. They're merging to become stronger, to become more terrible and worthy of the title of Undead Lord. And sees many memories. But this knowledge does not belong to him. He must resist. Holos thought it was so foolish. He didn't understand why the guy didn't want to accept them. The protagonist saw that it was not flesh. Moreover, it is not spirit either. It's all just an illusion. The master marveled at how strong this soul was. He saw that the fellow refused to admit defeat. This is impossible, and has climbed too deep into the abyss. He's just a weak, sickly creature. The boy was sure he would live and be free. Mr. Holos felt that it was impossible to put up such resistance. He orders N to stop resisting. The boy did not realize who it was. The protagonist felt his heart beating. He is alive. He realized that they had put that curse to create an undead lord. And this is immortality, eternal life, perfect, immortal and invulnerable. Death to them, nothing more than transformation. Holos declared it was over. This body would belong to him. The guy will be able to continue to live forever as the vessel of the undead lord. The undead was taking over his body. What a pity, but he would be the one to become the undead lord. Therefore, Holos will become the food. The darkness had finally fully penetrated his body. Exhausted, he fell to the ground. For some reason, the boy feels a surge of energy. The knowledge and memories he had been merging with had vanished. Most likely, his instincts deemed them dangerous and isolated them. He thinks it's not worth forcing himself to try to remember. The boy suddenly realized that there was no strength left in his limbs. Could it be that he was tired? He feels every change in himself. More importantly, he is on a completely different level. However, considering that his body hasn't turned black, it doesn't seem like he has turned into the next stage of a dark stalker. Worrying would come later. Right now, it was important to understand where he had spent all his energy. The dawn has begun at a very bad time. He will probably weaken even more now. Sunlight can be deadly. Somehow, before the sun fully rises, he must get out of this monster overpopulated forest and hide. However, it's definitely all makes one feel alive. The guy remembers that he forgot his cleaver. Despite the circumstances, he should go back and retrieve it. At that moment, his leg is shot from a bow. It was a silver arrow. The Death Order Knights were relieved to know that the monster was still here. He had tricked their princess. They were just wasting their time. Leffrey assumed that since he had such strength and red eyes, he must be an inferior gull. He would even say a gull. The protagonist didn't understand how that was the case, which surprised Nabila. He explained that they, the Death Knight Order, had only one reason to show up here: the destruction of monsters. Nabila was surprised that stubborn Senri had left, insisting that the body had to be returned no matter what. And then she came back with nothing. Leffrey complimented, "She may be strong, but she is quite naive. At first glance, she can hold her own, but she has a weak temper and is not good at lying at all." And so, once again, Senri makes such a mistake. This is the reason why they exist. The guy reported that he had some memories of his life. Turns out, Senri told them. It's hard to believe, but he dug a grave, didn't he? If he had just desecrated it, they wouldn't have cared, but they had never heard of a monster burying people. The main character was adamant about how he never attacked humans and never intended to. He wanted to mention Senri, but Nabila stated that the monster had no right to say her name. The boy thought she had given him away. Leffrey replied that if Senri had done that, they wouldn't have had any problems, but she had begged them until the very end. However, their master turned out to be much more shrewd. Nabila leaned toward him. He really regretted his situation. To suddenly wake up as a monster like that. But even nightmares end one day. He asked if the boy agreed with him, grasping his hand and lifting. But he took advantage of Senri's weakness and tricked her, and that left a deep scar on her heart. He doesn't like this mild-mannered second-rate knight, but be that as it may, he is her mentor, and was able to harm her protected by a powerful blessing, which means he's an incredibly powerful monster. The guy asked to just let him go. He doesn't need anything. He replied that they couldn't let the monster go. Even though End is harmless now, at some point he will start killing. Leffrey took off his cloak. He realized that this was the reason why they couldn't sense his dark energy. Nabila noticed one of Holo's Carmen's treasures on him. They wouldn't have missed him in the city without it. But still, he tossed it to the ground. Now there was one last thing left to do. Kill him. The guy didn't want to die. He kept going on and on about it. The knight made his decision. This would be his last act of mercy. He would give him some time to repent. Leffrey felt that this was not the way to do it. He replied that the Death Knight's forgiveness of sins was an act of salvation. Nabila asked if he knew what the most painful death is for the undead. Sunlight. It weakens corpses to the point where they lose their ability to regenerate, and then gradually burns their damned abyss. All the time before its death, the undead is horribly tormented, and no matter how strong it is, any soon begins to weep. Humans call it the execution of the sun. Because of the brutality, they usually use it as a showdown, but now Nabila will use it to give him time to repent, for deceiving Senri, and for trying to return to life after death. He could consider it punishment for his sins. The thought came to the lad that while he had time he could figure out how to get out, but his arm was immediately cut off. The knight informed him that although he was giving him time, he was not giving him freedom, and all he will leave of him is his bloody head. I mean, that's all it takes to repent, right? The sun's rays increasingly exhausted and brought him closer and closer to death. He realized that this was just torture. The guy tried to tolerate and at the same time did not understand why the order would make the undead suffer so much before death. He left it at that and was careless, and knew he shouldn't scream to at least cut down a little on the drain on his strength. If not the tearing pain, then the fierce sun would do away with him. The feeling of helplessness, the approaching footsteps of death. Yes, the spirit dies faster than mortal flesh. A few hours later, he wondered if the feeling of loneliness, too, was part of the sentence. Holos marveled at how pathetic the guy was, and laughed, jokingly saying that he wanted to take his body away again. But all he had left was his neck. Holos Carmen replied that he had no strength left now. You can eat him, but he's only leftovers. It sounded strange to the guy. The ghost was certain that he would die. But if he gave his body to him, at least he wouldn't die like that. Enda was surprised that he still wasn't dead. He has no heart, and it is the heart that is weak. Holos told him that for vampires, driving a stake through the chest is a kind of curse. But as long as nothing was driven into his heart, he would live, and called them absurd creatures, contradicting the logic of the whole world. However, in this case, he would pull his heart out, thus getting rid of this weakness. Holos recognized that undoubtedly a vampire's heart is the source of his abilities. The loss of his heart entails the loss of most of his power, which is true of him, the inferior vampire. Inferiors are, so to speak, preps for becoming vampires, essentially a chrysalis. He has vampire abilities, but they are incredibly weak, so the sun is slowly turning him to dust. But the boy's suffering will only increase. His power is exhausted. He will not be able to recover. His soul will wither under the sun's rays, and he will slowly die. And the abyss that awaits him will be deeper than he realizes. The lad may not expect to live long, and wondered what he should do. Nothing, it turned out. There is no way for a weakened inferior to survive. The boy realized he was finished. Then it was about to start. The battle of endurance. He tensed up. If he accepts death, he's finished. He knows that well, even though he is already dead. The fact that he has retained his memories is akin to a miracle. Holos Carmen was counting on his vessel to become the undead king, which means that he can't just destroy it. But there is no chance. There are no ideas. The only thing left to do is beg for another miracle. He looked at the beautiful glow of the sun, the morning he loved so much. However, the sunlight is about to banish him from this world. He does not want to die. The boy's head was cradled by the girl. Senri was saying something to him, but he heard nothing. The long-awaited miracle. Still, she's here, and, barely uttering a word, said thank you to her. The princess undid the buttons. The boy realized that Nabila and the others should not have chosen a slow execution. Don't give in to anger, don't give time for remorse. Destroy immediately. That is why they lost. Something truly precious. He sank his fangs into the girl. The master asked if Senri was still back. The guys didn't understand what she was even thinking. He's just a monster. This would probably be a trauma for her. The man replied that they lied to her about missing him. Reprehensible. It's a shame they had to resort to lying, but he feels no guilt. This is something that Senri had to go through at some point anyway. She's smart, and they can convince her when they talk. She just needs time to curb her emotions. Lefri asked the wizard if there really are undead who are resurrected with memories from a past life. He knows that vampires, by sucking blood, can enslave with their power. Perhaps his instincts are partially suppressed, for he never attacked them. Nabila thought he never attacked because Thelma shot him in the leg with the first shot. Still, the ones they saw couldn't even talk. The master agreed with him. He had to be destroyed. An undead with memories of a past life. Of course, such a thing exists. However, it's a secret he can't tell. It is known only to first-class knights. But Nabila could not choose the execution of the sun. Instead of pain, he should have chosen purification. His heart is still weak. The master does not know what his plan was, but there was no reason to use the execution of the sun. He said to destroy it for sure, didn't he? Nabila thought the execution of the sun was the surest way. What could an inferior vampire left with only a neck do? Does the master not understand? No one can help him, he has no friends. If given the chance, he will take the execution of the sun. The master decides that it is already time to find Senri and bring her back. They can't stay in this city for long. They have many other enemies besides Holo's Carmen. Then Nabila decided to go fetch the stubborn girl. There was a knock at the door. Nabila thought that Senri had returned and went to the door. The master was worried too. How much longer is she going to sulk? The master motioned for Nabila to stop. The door creaked open, and apologized for disturbing him. He said hello. It felt as if unless he was invited, he would not enter. Probably the influence of the essence of the inferior vampire. He approached the master, saying he had been a fan during his lifetime, and asked for his autograph. The man asked what brought the inferior vampire. The guy replied that he had merely come to pass on Senri's words. She thanked him for looking after her. The girl realized how naive she was, gave an inferior vampire blood just to save him from disappearing. In addition, she decided to follow him and turned her back on the order of death. That's unforgivable, but she knows it well. A person who has retained his memories, forced to live the existence of a resurrected dead man. Perhaps the mentor knows something, and that was the reason. But his eyes begged for salvation. Just a timid young man trying to remain human, and therefore, she is ready. If End is consumed by instincts, if he starts attacking people, Senri will immediately kill him. That's her responsibility as a Death Knight. The girl was returned to the End, whom she was glad to see. He approached her, informing her that the negotiations had failed. He knew, of course, but sword is really scary. Even just standing next to it, the guy could feel its power of purification. He crushed the pendant hiding the essence with one hand, and the blade he had given her, telling her to give it back, saying it was no longer needed. The princess replied that this was why she said it was worth going to her. The knight threw his sword, saying that today they had a deal and he was letting him go. But that doesn't mean he believes him. He believes Senri. That's why the guy has to give her the blade back. It's not his place to give it back. End has made it clear to her that he will definitely try to get it back. The main character thought he was terrible. He took advantage of Senri's kindness and compassion. But he was on his way to becoming an unforgivable creature, a universal enemy, the king of the dead. Therefore, he will use anything, sacrifice everything. Kindness, compassion, anger, joy. He'll use whatever he can. That's how End will find freedom and peace. Then he proposes to Senri to run away together, to which the girl agrees. He does not want to die and wants to be free. The guy would willingly become the world's scariest monster.